SongTown, we are here, Clay Mills and I, in the SongTown studio. Today we've got a topic that I think is going to be fun to talk about, and it is, how long does it take to become an overnight success? And what made me think of this was, you and I both had cuts with Diamond Rio. Clay had a big hit with them. But one time, they were asking in an interview what it feels like to be an overnight success. And what the interviewer did not know was that these guys had worked at Opryland theme park for 10 years or something. I mean, a long time before they got their record deal. So their record comes out and their first song out is a number one hit. So this reporter didn't know the backstory.
Right.
And Marty Rowe, the lead singer's answer was, it was a hell of a night. And he went on to talk about how long they had worked and how they traveled in the beginning in a van and all this stuff, you know. So a lot of times people take or have the perception that, oh, this guy just strolled into town, pitched this song to Keith Urban, Keith put it out, and he became an overnight success. So that's not usually the case, is it, Clay?
No. That's a reason my buddy Troy Cartwright has a podcast called 10-Year Town. And it's literally because when songwriters and artists come to Nashville, they talk about, you know, it takes 10 years to make it. When I first came here many years ago, they said it was a 5-year town. Then I started hearing a 7-year town. Mm-hmm. Now it's a 10-year town.
Yeah.
And if you check out his podcast, you'll hear all the writers that he's had on, and you hear about their journey, you know? And I think a lot of times we get members in SongTown even that'll go, well, I'm going to give this songwriting thing a try. If I'm not doing it full time and making a living in 2 years, I'm going to quit and go back to my real job, quote,
Right.
Air quotes, real job. And I think it's just being unrealistic. Is it possible it could happen in 2 years? Yeah. I mean, anything's possible. And I'm sure it probably has for someone. But by and large, you know, everybody I know, it took them a while. You know, I just think of myself. I didn't get my first publishing deal till I was early 30s. And I lost 3 publishing deals before I even had a hit. You know, I was 6 years into it before I had a bona fide hit song.
Mm-hmm. That was,
you know, and that's after I got my writing deal.
Yeah.
So I don't say this to discourage anyone. You just kind of have to be realistic. And what are you here for? Are you here to make money and make a living? Is that your goal? Are you here to write songs and have a life of songwriting? If you can't do it full time, it's okay. You know, for years I worked a day job, and then at night on weekends I would write songs. And I think that's fine. But my goal was always to be a songwriter, you know, and when I got really good at being a songwriter, the world saw I was going to stick to it. I wasn't giving up, wasn't going back home. It's almost like, not to get too woo-woo, but it's like the universe said, we're going to test you.
You know? Young Clay.
Yeah.
We're going to see what you're made of.
Yeah. And so finally, after testing me and testing me and testing me, the universe goes, okay, we're going to let you have a hit song. And I thought, gosh, I got it made now. But then it took me a few more years to get my next hit.
Yeah.
You know, and then I went on a run, but it was never easy, you know, and the goal was never, I've got to make my living at this or I'm going to quit and go get a real job, you know.
Right.
I don't think that really works.
Yeah. I mean, most of the people that I started out with, writing with, as far as artists and other writers, are not still in the music business. You know, they quit. And the only way to be an overnight success really is to just keep working until something happens, you know? And I think, too, you mentioned unrealistic expectations. You know, nobody comes to Nashville and goes, if I'm not one of the most successful lawyers in Nashville in 2 years, I'm going to quit.
Right, exactly.
You know, no one does that.
If I don't have the best doctor practice and, you know, in a year and a half, then I'm just going to go.
Yeah.
You know, it takes a while.
And, you know, getting a major label cut is, you're the best in Nashville. when you're doing that. If you get on a big album from a major label artist, you're among the best in Nashville, so it's just not realistic to come into any music scenario and go, well, yeah, in 2 years I want to be at the top of the game in this thing. And I think a lot of it goes back to that 10,000 hour theory of that it takes 10,000 hours to become really to master something. And like you said in another episode, we don't think you ever really master songwriting. You can just always keep improving, So I think just setting the expectation of, one day I'll have a song that changes everything, but until then I'm going to just keep working. When I'd had a couple of things before Must Be Doing Something Right, but I showed up to write with Jason Matthews one day, and we were working on another song idea. This was the second day on that idea, and we were really frustrated with it, so we went to lunch. And on the way back, he said, "Do you like that song we're working on?" And I said, "No, but I thought you liked it." And he said, "I don't like it." So we'd been working for a day and a half on a song we didn't like, and we just said, let's write something fun. Jason said, well, let's write something people can make out to. And we wrote Must Be Doing Something Right, and that changed my life.
Do you think today, because like you were saying, you had worked all day, it wasn't happening. There's a tendency in the music business today to, you get together and in a couple hours, that song's done. And so I'm just thinking about it. I don't think what you're describing would actually happen today so much, because it was like if you weren't getting anything, a couple hours, I got to get to my next appointment, and I know I've had songs that we didn't have any success with until the very end of the day, and we were about to quit, and then somebody said something brilliant, and you're like, oh, let's write that. And so it's almost like I feel like sometimes the industry, the way it works today, would miss a song like Must Be Doing Something Right, sometimes.
Yeah. And I think, too, looking back on it, we came into the day thinking, oh, we got to work on this thing. I think Marty likes it. I think Jason likes it. And instead, we just wrote something we loved.
Right.
And it turned out that it was a big hit. And I had some people in the process of that, in interviews and podcasts and things, go, you just kind of came out of nowhere with that song, as if I was an overnight success. And I'm like, no, that was 7 years. Well, it was 6 years after my first writing deal, 8 years after I started really trying to write full time. So I didn't.
How many songs did it take before that? How many did you write?
Hundreds. I was writing. One point, I was writing over 300 a year, so it was a lot of songs.
So 300 times 7, right there's over 2,000 songs.
Yeah. And so there's so much for just sticking with it, keeping on doing the work, also staying true to what you love. Writing things that you love. When the whole energy in the room shifted when we went from writing something we weren't really into to writing something that we loved.
Yeah, and plus, I think that's it. If you're listening and you're going, wow, this sounds hard, like you got to stick with it even though nothing's happening and it's a grind. But the thing that makes it fun is that we're doing what we love, I think if you keep your main focus on having fun and getting better at what you're doing, then I think that's how you survive that grind.
Yeah. I heard a quote that I love recently, and it was, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And I think that applies to songwriting in a big way. The people who succeed are the people who don't quit.
Yeah.
And
they're not the people that were great to begin with all the time.
I wasn't great to begin with.
I mean, oh my gosh, I don't, if I can tell this story. So years ago, when I was on a run of having some hits, there was this young artist, and Andrew Dorff said, hey, you want to go write with this young artist? And I was like, okay. And I think the day before I canceled. Anyway, the artist ends up blowing up later. And it taught me a hard lesson that you can't judge somebody where they are right now. But if you see that they're determined to get better and they work at it, I've seen so many writers go from being just completely average to being phenomenal. And you would have never guessed that would have happened. So, I mean, it just taught me a lesson is to not count people out if they want to work hard and get better at something.
Well, our friend Mark Irwin he had a number one song pretty early in his career, and then he went 25 years without another big hit, and then all of a sudden he's got 3 number ones in a row, you know? And so over and over and over, we see people succeeding just because they didn't quit. They just stuck with it. You know?
It's like he got a hole-in-one on the golf course, and he got that, and he's like, wow, this is going to be easy. I'm a great golfer. And then, that's a long time, 25 years to go between. Yeah. Now, I know Mark really well, and he was getting cuts on albums, and because he was a great writer. And so it wasn't like he had nothing, but as far as like having that big song that really put your kid through college, it took him another 25 years to do that.
Yeah. So if you want to succeed at songwriting or anything else, I think the key many times is just to not give up, to keep doing the work. And, you know, one day you'll have something pop out that's great, and people will think you're an overnight success, and you can look at them and say, it's a hell of a night. Thanks to our sponsor, Sweetwater. Check them out in the show notes. See you next time.
Cheers.